Societies that share common features. Let's take a look at, again, these four early river valley civilizations. Again, David. So we don't, again, we've already gone through this, right? Features of a civilization. We've gone through these 8 in depth. Okay. Um, okay, so we don't need to go through this again. Features of a civilization. Okay, now you can start, David. Good. It's good that you could even see that. Wow. I put it so small. Okay, so another look at our map here. This is probably the best map that we have of ancient Mesopotamia. Okay. And let's focus now on these two rivers, Euphrates and the Tigris River. Okay, and let's take a look at geography. So the difference between lower Mesopotamia, which is down here, and upper Mesopotamia, which is up here. Good. So let's take a look at, again, we got Uridu and Lagash, Uruk, and then the northern part, still considered lower, is Babylon. So Babylon is still part of lower Mesopotamia, down here. And what about upper Mesopotamia, which is closer to Asia Minor, up here in this area? Good. Okay. Ooh, and the importance of flooding and irrigation, David. Yeah. So you can see this cross section here. Another closer look at the levee. Okay, and drought. Yes, flooding and now drought.
Summers were generally dry with only 15 to 20 centimeters of rain, so irrigation was necessary for drainage and control of water levels so that the area was suitable for living and for growing crops. And they would grow crops of barley, wheat, and over 60 varieties of vegetables.
Okay, let's get a new reader. Adrian, do you want to read?
Yeah.
All right, the history of Mesopotamia.
Unity under diversity. Mesopotamia was made up of four peoples, which with different societies, customs, and languages. Each rose in wait, city states. Yeah, I missed that, my bad. Each rose in power and tried to control and unify Mesopotamia at different points in history. Sumer, southern part, 3500 to 2004 BCE. Akkad, northern part, 2340 to 2180 BCE. Babylonia, First Babylonian Empire, 19,000 to 1595 BC. It should be
1900,
BC, right?
yeah. BC, yeah, 1900 to
Yeah.
1595, yep. And Second Chaldean Empire.
Second Chaldean Empire, 612 to 550 BC. Assyria. Is that
The,
how you pronounce it?
the Assyrian.
Assyria. Assyrian Empire, 1100 to 612 BCE.
Good. So let me just go through this. If we take again, you would have read about this, right? You would have just read about this. But if we take a look at our timeline here, which is very important to understand,
Mm-hmm.
this yellow is when these groups, um, were in power, right? So if we see Sumer, which roughly comes into power around 4000 and then really strengthens in 3000 BC, these are the Sumerian states. Okay, starting with the city states of Uruk. Okay, remember there were no countries here. These were just city states that were led by a leader or a king. Okay, so um, you have Sumer here at the bottom. Um, and you could see their reign and power here. You have Babylon in red up here. Okay. You have the Assyrians and when they were powerful up here. And then, of course, you have Persia around 525 BC when they were in power. So these yellow markings kind of explain when these groups were at their height. So you see the Sumerians were really the first, and then the Babylonians at different times. The Assyrians were very powerful around 1000. And then, of course, it ends with the Persian Empire. And then, of course, Greece starts to become a major player as well around when Persia, because Persia and Greece are major rivals. Okay. So this is a really good kind of timeline of what's happening in this region. So let's start with our green, the Sumerians. Sumerians. They were the first. Okay. Let's thank you, Adrian. Thank you
Should I
so
keep
much.
reading?
I'm going to try to keep changing it up. Okay. Just to
Okay,
get
okay. No worries.
more people involved. Um, Layla, are you there, Layla?
Hello?
Yes. Can you read for us Sumerian innovations?
Yep. Okay. Sumerian innovations. So its writing was developed in cuneiform and the epic poem of Gilgamesh. Ziggurat, which is the holy temple, which was pinnacle. It also had the wheel, which was for transportation and had a four-wheeled chariot. It also had pottery, which was from the wheel, and improved sail, which was first known maps, and irrigated fields and drainage systems, which included canals and dams. And its agriculture had three main crops, which were barley, dates, and sesame seeds. And its architecture included mud brick. It also had trade system and bartering, which was mainly barley, wool, and cloth for stone, metals, timber, copper, pearls, and ivory. And people could rent land from priests, which was most of profits of trade and went to the temple. However, the Sumerians were not successful in uniting Lower Mesopotamia.
Good. Many different groups would try to unite the entire region. At some cases, some points, they were successful in history. The Sumerians were not successful in uniting, but look at all these things that they brought, these new innovations. One being, and I'm going to focus on it now, is cuneiform, which is the writing. So I'm going to be going out. I'm going to be showing you some short videos throughout this class. Let's start with writing.
Because the Cyrus cylinder was meant for a Babylonian audience, it was written in the Babylonian language, which is a Semitic tongue related to the modern languages of Hebrew and Arabic and Aramaic. The writing system which Cyrus's officials used was the traditional cuneiform script, which had been invented in ancient Iraq well before 3000 BC. It is written by pressing a stylus, something a bit like a chopstick, into the surface of the clay, which is nearly dry, and the signs which convey the sound of the language consist of different arrangements of these strokes. They're written one by one, and the reader has to join them up, and the sound emerges from the clay. This is the line that says, I am Kurash, Shah Kishati, king of the world, the great king, king of Babylon, and so it goes on. So we're going to write Kurash. So the first sign, Ku, has a big vertical, two small horizontals, one bigger horizontal, a little vertical, and another horizontal, like a box. This is Ku. Then Ra, we have three strong horizontals to begin, one big one next to it, then one little vertical wedge, and one bigger vertical wedge. Ku, Ra. Now we do Ash, which is three long horizontals, Komsa, and then a vertical in the middle. So we can read this, Ku, Ra, Ash, the name of Cyrus.
Okay. So that was the cuneiform. Okay. And if we take a look now at the geography of ancient Sumer and Uruk. Okay, Layla, continue reading about the writing in ancient Mesopotamia.
So, the greatest contribution of Mesopotamia to Western civilization was the invention of writing. It allowed the spread of knowledge, the code of laws, and records to facilitate trade and farming. The Sumerians wrote on wet clay tablets with the point of a reed and then dried in the sun to make a tablet. And scribes were only ones who could read and write. Scribes also served as priests, record keepers, and accountants. And as society evolved, the first form of writing was developed called cuneiform, meaning wedge-shaped, dating to 3500 BCE. And cuneiform spread to Persia and Egypt and became the vehicle for the growth and spread of civilization and the exchange of ideas among cultures.
Good. Here's some more examples of the cuneiform and how it developed over a few thousand years. You could see how fish changed, how bird changed, water and barley, how it changed from a very easy pictograph or picture to a more complicated and advanced type of writing system. And if you were to take this writing system and match it up with the letters, would look something like this. Imagine trying to write your name using these symbols. Be very difficult and time consuming. Let's move on. Oh yeah, to the Epic of Gilgamesh, the epic tablet, the flood story. This is the famous story of ancient Mesopotamia. It's called the Epic of Gilgamesh. Sabrina, would you like to read for us?
Yeah, sure. Gilgamesh Epic Tablet Flood Story. The Epic of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is the first known work of great literature. An epic poem, so 2600 BC, Search for Immortality. A Search for Immortality by King Gilgamesh of Uruk after death of his friend
Enkidu.
Enkidu. Epic mentions a great flood. And Gilgamesh is similar to the Nippur tablet, telling the story of the creation of humans and animals, the cities and the rulers, and the Great Flood. Scientific analysis, Gilgamesh and the Nippur tablet both parallel the story of Noah and the Ark, the Great Flood in the Old Testament of the Jewish and Christian holy books. Modern science argues that an increase in sea levels about 10,000 years ago, the end of the Ice Age, the melting ice drains into the oceans, causing the sea level to rise more than 10 feet in 1 century.
Mm-hmm. So you see here, so basically a brief overview of what this writing story is about, and the date, and how it does mention a great flood, and how there's a lot of just like you read last night. There's a lot of similarities between the creation stories of ancient Mesopotamia and with the Judeo-Christian story, and that would be the Great Flood, right, happening around the same time. Okay. And modern science, their analysis or the scientific take is that modern science argues there was an increase in sea levels because of the end of the last ice age, and therefore sea levels rose. So let's continue with Mesopotamia and just a brief overview of the religion. Again, this much different than our religion is this is polytheistic, right? Poly meaning many compared to our monotheistic religion. Okay, so the religion of ancient Mesopotamia was polytheistic. Okay, they had more than one gods. So let's read about that, Sabrina.
Religion. Position of king was enhanced and legitimized by religion. Kingship believed to be created by gods, and the king's power was divinely ordained. Belief that gods lived on distant mountaintops. Each city was ruled by a different god. Kings and priests act like interpreters. They told the people what the gods wanted them to do. Gods were worshipped at temples called ziggurats. Polytheistic religions consisting of over 3,600 gods, poly meaning many, and theism meaning gods.
Good.
Prominent
Sorry, these are some of the gods that you would have learned last night. Can you just go through these 5 for me?
Yeah, prominent Mesopotamian gods: Enlil, supreme god and god of air; Ishtar, goddess of fertility and life; On, god of heaven; Enki, god of water and underworld; and Shamash, god of son-in-law.
Good, thank you. So it's important to know that each city-state had a different god that they worshipped, right? Whether it be Enki, Ishtar, Enlil, each city-state was worshipped by a different deity or god. Okay, and there were many gods. Yes, sir.
About the Mesopotamian gods.
Yes.
How was it? I was thinking that I know how in Greek mythology, this is not Greek, of course, but in Greek mythology, some gods or goddesses in that sort of fashion are considered evil in some fashion, or like are known to be a bad omen or something. But
Mhm.
is that like how, like, is that how it is in some other ones like Mesopotamian?
Certainly not like it was for the Greeks and the Romans. Yeah, their take on religion was a little bit different, and we're going to get there, and I'm going to talk about the differences. But yeah,
Oh,
sorry, that's a very good question. Yes, yeah,
okay.
thank you. So continuing with the ziggurats, okay, which were the holy temple, right? They were really high. They were on top of the mountains. It was considered the mountain of the gods, right? The Sumerians believed that gods would reward them for good service. And they also believed that the gods would punish the people, yes, who made them angry, right? So lots of different myths coming from these deities and coming from the thousands of gods in their religion. And let's take a look at some of the metalworks and the skills at ancient Ur, this city in Mesopotamia, which really flourished, which was really excelled in the early times of Sumer. You can see here a board game at Ur. Really sophisticated work here. This is very important, the royal standard of Ur, which is really you can see what was happening in this time in terms of visualizing these pictures. You also see the wheel. I don't know if you could see it here, but in this picture, it shows us the use of the wheel. Let me see if I can have.
The Lachish room.
Just show this one. Let me give you.
A brief history of Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers, derives its name and existence from the rivers Tigris and Euphrates. These two rivers created the Fertile Crescent in the midst of surrounding inhospitable territory. The space we call Mesopotamia is roughly the same as that as the modern country of Iraq. About 10,000 years ago, the people of this area began an agricultural revolution. Instead of hunting and gathering their food, they domesticated plants and animals, beginning with the sheep. They lived in houses built from reeds or mud brick, grouped in villages where they tended their crops. They built granaries to store their grain, and began developing a token system to record trade and accounts. Between 3500 and 3000 BC, for reasons still not well understood, the civilizations of South Mesopotamia underwent a sudden growth and change, centered in the cities of Ur and Uruk. This development was perhaps driven by climatic change, which rendered the old ways of agriculture less productive. People clustered into fewer but larger locations, and the plow, potter's wheel, and the introduction of bronze can be seen as the responses to demands of more intensive economic life, and also for the causes of increased complexity in that life. In this same period came the beginnings of writing, metrological systems, and arithmetic. The main part of the third millennium, now called Early Dynastic Period, saw the gradual development of Sumerian civilization, based on numerous city-states. From the Early Dynastic Period comes the earliest Sumerian literature, including the epic poetry about Gilgamesh. The Sumerians lived in a complex, unpredictable, and frequently hostile environment. They had to contend with floods, droughts, storms, dust, heat, disease, and death. They strove to uncover order and organization in the world to overcome feelings of futility and powerlessness.
Okay. So now we come to the world's first empire, the Akkadians. Okay, Sargon of Akkad. This is really, really cool here. The Akkadians. Now we're going to look at our next group here, which conquer ancient Mesopotamia. Can we get Sarah? Would you like to read for us?
For sure. Awesome. Akkadians, nomadic people from the Arabian Peninsula that migrated to Mesopotamia. Leader, Sargon the Great. Sargon unified Lower Mesopotamia after conquering
Sumerians.
Sumerians in 2340 BCE. Creates the first empire, capital Akkad, spreads Mesopotamian culture. However, short-lived dynasty as Akkadian Sumerians were conquered by the invading barbarians, Elamites, in 2100 BCE.
Good. So the Akkadian reign was very short, roughly 2300 to only 2100. So just over 200 years. So it wasn't a very long reign, but they did conquer a lot of territory. Okay. As you can see here, the Akkadian Empire was the blue and the Sumerian Empire was this orange. So you could see that's a lot of territory that the Akkadians had conquered in just a couple hundred years. And then we get a new group in town. This group was called the Babylonians, Sarah. Tell me a little bit about them.
Okay, the Babylonians. Sixth Amorite king, King
Hammurabi.
Hammurabi. Babylon.
Hammurabi.
He conquered Akkad in Assyria, north and south. He built new walls to protect the city and new canals. Individuals could own land around cities' private property. Merchants and traders could keep most profits and even formed guilds/associations. Grain used as the medium of exchange. Hammurabi's legacy law code. Babylonians will reunite in Mesopotamia in 1830 BC. Central location dominated trade.
Good. Yes, the Babylonians were excellent traders, excellent merchants, excellent traders of different goods. Also known for King Hammurabi, who was the greatest king in Babylon, and his famous Hammurabi's law code. Okay. Here's Hammurabi's law code right here. It's this interesting piece of this artifact right here. Around 1790 to 1750, that's when he was around. Hammurabi's code. Can you read this more about Hammurabi's code?
Yeah, for sure. Most extensive law code from the ancient world. Code of 282 laws inscribed on a stone pillar placed in the public hall. Hammurabi's stone depicts Hammurabi as receiving his authority from God. Set of divinely inspired laws plus societal laws. Punishments were designed to fit the crimes as people must be responsible for their own actions. Origin to the concept of an eye for an eye. Example, if a son struck his father, the son's hand would be cut off. Consequences. For crimes dependent on rank in society. Example, nobility only had to pay fines. Nobility. Sorry, nobility only had to pay fines.
Thank you. So yeah, that's a really good explanation of what this code was all about. It was really the first written law code, over 280 laws, and it was the origin of it was an eye for an eye, right? I'm sure you've heard that before. It starts here in Babylon. So it was a very, very harsh system, harsh laws. Here's an example I have for you. If a son struck his father, the son's hand would be cut off. So very, very harsh. Okay. And of course, the consequences of crimes depended on your class, depended on your wealth, right? So the nobility at times would only have to pay small fines. Okay. Here's Hammurabi the judge. And On the left side it's called the Stela. Okay, this is called the Stela, which has the 280 laws. Okay, is located in the museum in Paris, and it was discovered in 1909 in Susa in southern Iran. I think I have a
Sir, I think it's called like Shush, from what I know.
Yeah, okay. Is that how it's pronounced? Shusha?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's just like Shush.
Shush. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, and let's take a closer look at the law code.
We're in the Louvre in Paris, looking at one of their most famous objects. This is the law code stele of King Hammurabi.
It's interesting to me that this is one of the most popular objects to look at here, and I think it's because of our modern interest and reliance on law as the founding principles of a civilization. And this is such an ancient object. This is nearly 4,000 years old.
A stele is a tall carved object. This one is carved in relief at the top, and then below that and on all sides we have inscribed cuneiform. It's written in the language of Akkadian,
which was used for official government decrees.
But that's the language. The script is cuneiform. It's divided into 3 parts. There's a prologue, which talks about the scene that's being represented at the top, the investiture of Hammurabi. What we see is the king on the left. He's smaller, and he's facing the god Shamash. This is the sun god, the god of justice.
And we can tell he's a god because of the special horned crown that he wears and the flames or light that emanate from his shoulders.
We can think of this as a kind of divine light, the way that in so much Christian imagery we see a halo.
And we have that composite view that we often see in ancient Egyptian and ancient Near Eastern art, where the shoulders are frontal but the face is represented in profile.
Shamash sits on a throne, and if you look closely, you can see under his feet the representation of mountains that he rises from each day. He's giving to the king a scepter and a ring. These are signs of power.
Hammurabi is demonstrating here that these are divine laws,
that his authority comes from Shamash.
So we have more than 300 laws here.
And they're very particular. Scholars believe that they weren't so much written by the king as listed from judgments that have already been meted out.
They're legal precedents, and they take the form of announcing an action and its consequences. So if you do X, Y is the consequence.
So, for example, if a man builds a house and the house falls on the owner, the builder is put to death.
So there's a kind of equivalence, and this might remind us of the biblical law of an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth,
which is also found on the stele. And it's important and interesting to note that the stele predates that biblical text. The last part of the text, what is often referred to as the epilogue, speaks to the posterity of the king, of the importance of his rule, and the idea that he will be remembered for all time.
This is certainly not a unique stele in terms of recording laws, but it does survive largely intact. When it was discovered, it was broken only into 3 parts, which you can still see today.
These laws, almost 4,000 years old, tell us a tremendous amount about Babylonian culture, about what was important to them. So many of these laws deal with agricultural issues, issues of irrigation, and are clearly expressing points of tension in society.
A lot of them have to do with family life, too, and the king is, after all, responsible for the peace and prosperity and feeding of his people.
And the stele is such a wonderful reminder that Mesopotamia was such an advanced culture. Here, almost 4,000 years ago, we have cities that are dependent on good crop yields, that require laws to maintain civil society, and a reminder of the debt that the world owes to the ancient civilizations of Mesopotamia, an area that is seeing so much conflict now.
All right, fantastic. Fantastic. The stele, yep. Okay. Oh. Okay. So next we have the Assyrians.
Sir, could I read that?
Yep, sure. Who was that?
Oh, me, Dina.
Oh, sure.
Okay. Hittites began to conquer Asia Minor 2000 BC. A strong army with chariots, horse-drawn carts, conquered Babylon in 5095 BC. Borrowed from Mesopotamian and Egyptian culture, lasted until about 1200 BC.
So you see where they're located in modern day Turkey here, which is Asia Minor. So to the north of Mesopotamia. And we have the Assyrians next.
The mighty Assyrians, 1100 BC.
Oh, sorry.
Assyria emerged as a dominant force. City of Assur became important political center. After Hammurabi's death, Babylon fell apart. Assyrians controlled more of surrounding area and came to dominate Mesopotamia. Made conquered lands pay taxes. Ruled by fear as kings were first to have a permanent army made up of professional soldiers, estimated to 200,000 men. Made superior weapons of bronze and iron. Iron changed lifestyles and warfare in Mesopotamia.
Good. So the Assyrians are dominating around 1100 BC. Now that's an important time because this is when we enter the Iron Age. So they're coming in at a time where there's new technology, new warfare technology, new advancements in the field. So they have a very big advantage at this time, and they are a dominant force, okay, in around 1100 BC. Okay. So after Hammurabi's death, Babylon would fall apart. They could not control the area as well. And you have this new group who's coming in, and they have this this reputation of just being vicious warriors. Okay, so this rule by fear begins in Assyria. Okay, so the significance. Continue reading of Assyria.
The Assyrian significance. Assyrian established first true empire in history. They had a powerful army. They treated conquered people cruelly, atrocities and torture. Collapse about 612 BC. States began to revolt.
So roughly, the Assyrians are around from 1100 to 600. Okay, and by 612, they are no more. Okay, and then we have another short rule by the what we call Neo-Babylonians, New Babylonians, also called Chaldeans, which you would have read about.
They descended from Hammurabi's Babylonians at its height during the rule of Nebuchadnezzar, 605 to 562 BC. Spent a lot of money on Babylon, built hanging gardens of Babylon, and destruction of Nineveh, Assyrian. Empire collapsed in 539 BC after being defeated by the Persians. By 539 BC, Mesopotamia will be part of the vast Persian Empire led by Cyrus the Great.
Yeah, Cyrus the Great. Good. So again, this rule was very short, right? Roughly 60, 70 years. But again, you have the famous hanging gardens of Babylon. Okay. And you have the, yeah.
I've actually been to his what do you call it, tomb. It's really pretty.
Oh, really?
Like
Really?
there's this huge palace.
Yes.
And there's this wall called Pasargad, and it shows like unity of like different tribes that were in Iran, like different races and groups that they were.
Oh, cool. That is cool. That is.
And like when we went, like the tour guide said there was this part that when they first discovered it from like under the ground, it had color, but like it just like faded away really fast.
Okay. So very good. Thank you so much. And we can see here the Babylonian Empire. Okay. During this time. So you have the famous Hammurabi, which was part of the first empire, and then Nebuchadnezzar, part of the second Neo-Babylonian Empire. And the Babylonians are known for math, right? Math and calculations at this time and numbers. You can see here. Pretty cool.
So, sir, did things only go up to 59 at the time?
Well, no, this is just an example. I can't go through all the numbers, right?
Okay. I'm just joking around. Sorry.
So yeah, this is Dina. Just finish it off for us here.
Okay. Mesopotamia, specifically Babylon, used a mathematical system based on 60, as all their numbers were expressed as parts of or multiples of 60. Some parts of the base 60 system still remain today. 360 degrees in a circle, 60 seconds in a minute, and 60 minutes in 1 hour. They devised the calendar based on the cycles of the moon. Number of days between the appearance of 2 new moons was set as a month. 12 cycles made up a year. They drew up multiplication and division tables.
Good. Whew. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to stop it there. So I think we're going to spend 2 days on Mesopotamia. I wanted to spend a day, but I think this is a lot of information for you guys, right? I'm sure you want some time to go through it and take some notes. Okay. Are there any questions for me before I get your homework ready? Any questions? It's a lot of information you just took in. No? Hmm. What do I want to? Okay. So, what you can get started for me right now, and so tomorrow I'm going to make a bin for the Mesopotamian homework, okay? Because I think I'm going to spend 2 days on this. I'm going to get you started with your homework now, or just some questions. So I'd like you to go through some of the reflection questions that I have here, okay? Reflect and analyze the major achievements of some of these groups, okay? So here are questions 1 to 8, okay? If you can, using the PowerPoint that I have and the reading, you can go through it again and you can reflect on these 8 questions for me, okay? So I'd like you to do that now, okay? Are there any questions for me?
Nope, sounds good.
No questions for me? So the sea peoples, yeah, we're going to talk about the sea peoples. Okay, well, there's different people coming from the sea, but the Mycenaeans were one of them. Okay, the Greeks. Okay, but they weren't the only ones. Okay, so start with this reflection. Start with these reflections, questions 1 to 8, and go back and take some notes on what you learned today. Okay, take some notes on what you learned today.
Sir, I had a question.
Mm-hmm.
Was like Zoroastrianism after this, like Assyrians and stuff, or was it the same time?
Sorry, say that again.
Like, what was their religion?
Oh, I see what you're saying. I think it was towards the end. I think it was around the same time, but it's not something we're going to cover, though. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We have to. There's so much. I could spend so many days on Mesopotamia, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, we just don't have the time. Okay.
No, I just wonder, like, if it was the same time or like after it.
Yeah. Okay, so we're complete questions numbers 1 to 8. Okay. Okay, so again, I'd like you to go through the PowerPoint, take notes, read package. Again, I've also provided a chart with 4 different groups. That's a good way for you to take your notes, maybe divide them into different categories, maybe the Assyrians, the Sumerians, right?